So my talk is named Enhance Your Laravel App with OpenAI, or because it's the last talk this year or the last meetup this year, I thought it would be nice to do it a bit in a funny way. So why I can't continue. So my second talk title is Why Are Kangaroos Not Allowed to Join? The topics we cover today is more or less the topic or the things added by OpenAI. It's GPT Visual. It's image analyzing with OpenAI. Then image creation with the new DALL-E version 3. Then text to speech, the new Assistance API. And if we have some time left, I will show you some little gadget in Laravel Pools, which was released 1 or 2 weeks ago from the Laravel team. Right. So some preconditions. I've installed a new, I set up a new Laravel application. I've installed OpenAI for AI for Laravel. That's a package I built together with Nuno. It's quite heavily used in the PHP or Laravel community. We have around 1.5 million downloads already within. So yeah, one was you and one was you and maybe twice me. Yeah, yeah, that's it. And I've installed Laravel Pools as well. So let's jump right into the code, or for now we start in the browser. We are building a little website. It's a community for elephants, the real PHP developers. We all know that elephants are the best PHP developers in this world. Our platform, of course, we have some meetups in our community. We have a pest doc bot where we can ask the bot for help when we are writing pest tests. And of course, we have a lot of more features. But the thing I want to focus first is this registration page. That's the default registration form from Laravel Breeze with Livewire under the hood. The only thing I've added is this field here. When a new user to the community signs up, he has to upload a photo from himself, and we are going to use it to identify if the new user is an elephant or not, because only elephants are allowed to join. So when we click the register button, we have this validation, and then we can choose this image here. It's, I don't know if you can see it, but it's an image of a kangaroo. When we click register, it accepts this image, but that's not what we want. We want to say no, kangaroos are not allowed. So here we have this register blade component. It's a Laravel Vault Livewire component, so it's from the Breeze stack. And the only thing I've added is this image file, this temporary uploaded file, this image, and I've added it to the validations as well, and of course here to the blade. And here we have a new rule that should ensure that it is an elephant image and not an image of a kangaroo or something else. I've commented everything out, so it didn't fail, so that's why we didn't have any validation error. And what we do now, it's too much to live code, so I've already put the code in there, and I will tell you what it does. First of all, it uses the OpenAI facade. It's from this package. There it uses the chat endpoint, because this vision or ChatGPT vision is only available on the chat endpoint. There is another endpoint called images, but this one is only for image generation. If you want to make decisions based on an image, or if you want to know what is within an image, you have to use the chat endpoint. And the GPT-4 vision preview model, it's still beta, therefore it's called preview. Everything here seems a bit magic, because it's lot of parameters, but here is a comprehensive documentation from OpenAI itself, where of all these parameters here for the chat API, like the model and max tokens and everything we're going to use now. We select the model. We have to say how many tokens we want to have in return in response at max. I don't know why we have to put here a value. If I don't give a value normally it doesn't terminate, but with GPT-4 Vision it terminates after around 100 tokens. I don't know why, but so we have to put a value here. And then we have two messages. The first one is the message with the role system. There are three possible roles. One is system, one is user, and one is assistant. System is normally the initial message where you can instruct the assistant how it, or the OpenAI system how it should behave. Then the second one is a message from the user, the thing the user entered into your input field or whatever. And then the role assistance is coming back from OpenAI. So what we are doing here, we're adding a system message, adding some text content, and here's the prompt, what we want to have in response from the OpenAI. We have to be very explicit. I don't read it all, but if there is an image, just return yes. It's very important to be clear and say only return yes here. And if it's not an elephant on the image, we want to have a funny explanation why this animal is not allowed to join. And then we give an example how the API or OpenAI could respond, for example, here for a penguin. And the second thing we have to do is we have to provide the user input. In this case, it's not a text, it's an image URL. You have two options. Option one is to provide a URL where OpenAI can fetch the image. But in this case, we have the image locally in our application. So we parse the image into base64 URL and provide this to OpenAI. So these are the two options you have, base64 or a real public URL. We are going to the DD here. When we submit again, now it's loading a bit because the GPT Vision is still a bit slow. But here we have the response, and as you can see here in the choices array, we only have one choice because we only asked for one response. You can ask for multiple responses with an additional parameter, but the default is one. And here the thing we want to have is this one. Yeah, it's too much hopping when kangaroos are going to join. So we are taking this response, putting into the result variable, and if it's not equal to yes, I added a string to lower because we cannot ensure that it's always lowercase. Sometimes AI makes it uppercase or the first letter uppercase, whatever. So if it's lowercase yes, everything is fine. Otherwise, we fail with the result, with the message. So when we do it again, we should be able to see the error message right below the image. Sometimes it's faster here. So as you can see, it's always the same with OpenAI or with AIs. Normally you never get the same result twice, except now they've added a so-called seed parameter where you can put an integer value, and when you pass the same seed again, you should most likely get the same result again until they change their models, what they do every couple of months. Yeah. But that's not all, because we have animals joining our, or trying to join our community, and some of them are maybe not capable of reading properly. So we want to ensure they are able as well. We add this button to show some more error details. And when we do it again, we get a nice little button to see why it failed. It displays the same message in a larger font, but I missed to add a loading spinner here, but here is an image for all the non what it actually does, it took the error message we got from the AI, put it back to the AI and asked for an image explaining why it's not allowed to join. And I'm not sure if you're able to hear it, but
Kangaroos can't join because their powerful kicks would send the servers hopping into.
so yeah, that's we can let the AI translate the text into speech as well. Yep. Now, after we've all seen that, I want to show you how this works. Here below is this modal. We have one content that's calling a route error image, and we have a second one for the audio, which is calling error audio. For simplicity, I put both into the web.php file. Here we're accepting the request. We are using this time the images endpoint. Call the create method, provide the DALL-E 3 model. There used to be, or actually there is still a DALL-E 2 model, but the image created by DALL-E 2 are really bad. And I think with DALL-E 3, it's not like Midjourney, but it's closer to Midjourney than before. Then we have a prompt that's basically the same that we have with in the chat endpoint with the system message. We give it the prompt and we tell it to create an image based on the message we have from the error from before. Then we have to say what's the size of the image should be. Currently, there are 3 options that we can ask for. With DALL-E 3, with DALL-E 2, you have some different resolutions. And the last parameter is that we want to have the image back as base 64 JSON. The other option is to get a URL where you can download the image for, I think it's 1 hour, and then they delete this URL. We are taking the image from the response, putting it into a response, into the response helper from Laravel, add the content type header image PNG, and return it to the browser. And for the MP3, we do something similar. We are taking the request, then there is an audio and a resource with some endpoints, and one of them is speech, or 2 of them are speech. One is speech and one is speech streamed. I will explain the difference in a second, but there are 2 other methods. One is transcribe and the other is translate. Transcribe is you have spoken voice and transcribe it to written text. And translate is the same, but you can change the language on the fly. So you speak German and transcribe it to English, for example. Then speech and speech streamed. The only difference is speech waits until the full audio is created, and streamed gives you the result on the fly or step by step. We are using streamed here. It wouldn't be necessary because it's only a really short message, but when you are going to translate, for example, blog articles on the fly, you don't want the user to wait until the full file is ready. Here you have some options as well. There are more, but the one you have to set is first the model. There is a normal and a H or high definition model. This is more when you store the audio file, you should prefer the high definition, and when you use it only once, it's okay to use the normal one. It's a bit cheaper and it's faster. Then you can choose from different voices, and then of course you have to input the message or the text you want to create the audio file from. This part looks a little bit complicated, but when we look step by step, we are using the response helper as well, and then the stream method, it wants to have a callback, or we have to provide a callback. We're taking the response. This is an iterator, so we can iterate over the response, and because it's always part of an MP3 file, we can just echo out the response, the string. It's not a readable string, of course, it's a binary string, but you can echo it, then flush it back to the browser. Yep, that's it, more or less. And then we have this little audio there. Yeah, that's the first part with the validation. Now, of course, we can prove that when we provide an image of an elephant, we should be able to join our awesome community. Let get trusted into the AI gods. So we did join successfully. The only thing in this community application works or is available for now is this PEST bot. I hope every one of you knows what PEST is. It's a testing framework on a layer on top of PHP unit. So what we would like to do is we would like to ask some questions like how we can create an architecture test for example, ensuring that all our contracts are interfaces, or all our classes in this namespace are actually interfaces and not classes or traits or whatever. Here we have this another Vault component, and we are going to use the assistance API for this. We are not going to use the chat API. It really looks like a chat, but the chat endpoint of OpenAI has some limitations. First of all, you are not able to provide that much input. You cannot provide files, for example, or you have to train your model or extend your model yourself, and then you can provide files. But that's something that's much more easy with the Assistant API. The second thing, the chat API is not aware of context, so you can't have a real conversation, or you have to store your conversation locally and push it always back to OpenAI, and that's different with the Assistant API. They are really aware of the context, and it's persistent there, and you can continue a conversation later on. Let's go back to the docs to give you a really quick overview how it works. There are assistants. The first thing you have to do, you have to create an assistant, and when you are creating an assistant, you can provide some information like which model to use, and you can provide some basic instructions how the assistant should behave, and so and you can add files or tools, like functions you want to call and stuff like that. Then when you have your assistant, you need to start a thread. That's actually, a thread is like a chat. When a new user, oops, sorry for messing up. When a new user comes to your bot, you start a new thread. Every conversation is a thread. And then you can add messages to the thread. It's the same like with the chat endpoint. You can add messages for the user, and you get messages back from the assistant. There is no system message here because you already added these instructions with the assistant, or you can override it with the thread, but it's not part of the messages anymore. And then when you add your messages, you can run this conversation or this thread, and then you get back a run object, and you have to, and that's a weakness, but as you can see, it's still beta. You get this run object, and the only thing it tells you, it's queued. So you have to pull again and again and wait until the status changes. It changes from queued to in progress, and later on it changes to one of these values here. Most likely it goes to complete. When you add function calls, it goes to requires action when it wants to call wants you to call one of these actions. And if something fails or cancelled, there are states for them that as well. So yeah, what we actually need to do to get this work, the first thing we need to do, we need to create this assistant here. I've already set this up. We give the assistant a name. We have some basic instructions what the assistant should do, and we have to choose a model. Now here as well, it works with the preview models because only these models are trained for or usable with the assistant's API. I put this into an artisan command, so what we return back is the ID of the assistant. We can go back to our blade file, add this ID here. Of course, in the real application, you would store this in a database or whatever. Then the first thing we do when we are reloading the site, whoops. That's bad. That actually means I'm logged out. Why?
I was just a kangaroo in disguise.
I don't know. The problem is I don't know what my password is. So we have to do it again. I really have no clue why it locked me out. Pardon?
The elephant ate your cookie.
Probably yes. So here we are. Good. We have already created this thread now in the mount method. That's the method in Livewire that is called once when you enter a Livewire component or initialize a Livewire component. Then we put the thread ID here into a public property. In Livewire, public properties are visible in the browser, in the inspector in JavaScript. Maybe it's not a good idea to store this public property, but yeah, for now, we are doing it like this. Then we have this input field that's bound to this input field here, or input property, and then we have a button send, which submits the form, and submitting the form calls this add message method. What we are doing here is we are going to add a message to this thread, so we have to provide the thread ID, add the message, the role is the user as I explained before, and the content is the thing that the user has typed. Then we clear the input field, and the next thing we have to do is to run the thread. So we've added the message to the thread, and now we have to run the thread. So we have to provide the thread ID, and we have to provide the assistant ID. So we have to say with which assistant the thread has to run. Yep, that's more or less it. We can give it a try. Come on. Now we can see that we have successfully added the message to the chat. So when we are going to look down here, what it actually does, it loops through all the messages, and we don't store the messages locally. So these are the messages that are coming from the thread object from the from the thread object from the API. But what we didn't do yet is listening or polling for the response. So I've added a message and function wait for response, which Livewire calls behind the scenes when the user message has been added with wire init, for the ones who are familiar with Livewire. What we are doing here is we are trying to retrieve a thread or a thread run by the ID of the thread and the current run ID, which we have stored up here. And then, because only polling is possible, we are looping until we have a state that is not queued or in progress. We don't have any validation yet, so we trust in God that the status will be complete, and until then we just loop. So when we are going to this again, now you can see here's a little loader while it is polling in the background. Because there is no streaming option yet on the Assistant API, we cannot show how the AI is building the content, how it would used to be from the ChatGPT. We have to wait until the full response has been crafted. And it depends on how long the response is. Sometimes it's quick, sometimes it's slow. And the Assistance API is, at the moment at least, much slower than the Chat API. So now the response we get back is quite long. For everybody who is familiar with PEST PHP, you can say that's not the best option how to do architecture testing in PEST. There is a really nice API, but I think it's a working solution. You're using the Finder component from Symfony and iterating through all your files, blah, blah, blah. The reason why this answer is not really good is because the model doesn't know about the latest version of PEST PHP with all this architecture testing capabilities it has. So it's only knowing what was available when the model was trained. I don't know what's the exact time is when this model was built, but I think it's already at least 1 year ago or before. So what we can do with the Assistant API, we can add some more context like files, as I said before. And what we are doing now is we are scraping the PEST PHP docs for never see before. It's a website with examples and all the documentation. Luckily, this source code for this website is in a GitHub repository, in a public GitHub repository, so we can crawl the docs via the GitHub API. So there are endpoints which let you find out which files does exist, and then we loop through all these files, and in the end we are joining all of them together into a full PEST doc markdown file. The reason why we have to join them is because the Assistance API allows only for 20 files to upload for one assistant, and we do have around about 30 or 35 files. So I already did this before. Then we have a second command when we can upload this file to OpenAI. It's this upload command here. Now OpenAI has this file, but the assistant doesn't know yet that this file exists. So we have to go back to our assistant creation command and add some different stuff here. We are going to accept the file ID and the ID of the file we had before. We add this to the assistant, and we add this retrieval tool. The retrieval tool they have is to retrieve data from files you've provided to the assistant or the thread, or or whatever, but from data you have provided and not from the common sense knowledge of the model itself. And then we have to update the instructions, so you have to tell the assistant that it should make use of your files. That's not the thing I've expected to do. We need this file ID. Ooh, that's bad. Required field missing. You're right. No, no, no. Let's go back. I've deleted this line. So let's add it again. No. Sorry. Now it. Yep. Here we go. Try again. We could modify the existing assistant as well, but we are creating a new one, so we have to update the ID here as well. Then when we are going back to the bot and try the same again, maybe we are lucky and the AI respects the file we have provided. Sometimes it, today when I tried it again, it happened that it didn't work, but when I prepared the talk, it worked perfectly fine. So let's give it a second. Yep.
Oh, nice.
And I'm not sure if you followed closely what happened in past PHP, but it used to be test, and then you provide a test name there. They added this arch method alias for test, I think last week was released. So when we are going to upload the newest docs to our bot, we always get results on the newest and the latest and greatest features of past PHP. We are already running late, so I will skip one part, but one thing I want to show you is we are going back to the elephant image rule here. One of the things when I'm going to write tests, I like to write code. I love to write tests as well. That's a bit hard with OpenAI because there are no deterministic results, but what you can do is fake the results and test against faked results. It's not, you cannot 100% assure that it works, but at least you can write some tests. And the package we are using has some helpers for that as well. Here we have a test that tests if the validation passes. We have this rule built up here in the for each. Then we pass the attribute. We pass a fake elephant JPEG. There is no elephant inside, but we call it elephant JPEG. And we pass the fail closure, which adds the message to this failed message property that we can expect, that this failed message should still be false and not an error message. And what the package allows us to do is call the fake method on the facade, like you're used from the mail facade or the queue or whatever. You can add fake, call fake, and then you can pass one or more responses the API should return instead of calling the actual API. So when we are going to run this test, this should pass because we have returned yes here, but we return no, sorry, you are a fish. Whatever. And you're going to run it again, it will say us no, sorry, this value isn't false. So we can use this to test our API, or we are mocking our OpenAI calls. Yep. Yeah, that's it. I think I've covered. Oops, yeah, I've covered most of the new stuff added by OpenAI. There is more to the Assistants API I wasn't able to show today. There are two key features. We used the retrieval tool now, which fetches data from or gathers data out of the files we provided. Then the second thing you can do, you can add function calls. So you can tell OpenAI, in my application, I have a function, for example, to validate PHP code if it's syntactically correct, for example. And then before the chat or the assistant returns the PHP code to the user, it validates the code through your local method if the PHP code is valid, instead of just displaying invalid code. You can do whatever you want there. You can provide methods to add to give additional data about the user, or if you want to be very crazy, you can do stuff like I can type turn on the lights, and then it knows, oh, I have to call the light method with the true parameter, and then you can call this and turn on the light. But be careful, because it's like all your methods you are calling, it's like when you have a public method, you have to validate what's coming in or what the AI is asking for. And the last thing you can do, they have a code interpreter. So it's a Python sandbox. You can ask to create Python code, and then it will run the code in the sandbox and iterate over the code to improve it before it returns the code back to you. That's one of the use cases. The other is you can use it to create data from files you've provided, like statistics, image creation. That's all. They all do this stuff in this Python sandbox. Yeah, but I haven't used the code interpreter myself yet. Yeah, that's it. Thank you very much.